finally here. You've finally arrived. You've at last found the one place which holds the answers to the questions of the ages. You're excited. Your heart palpitates. Is it real? Can it be true? You're understandably hesitant, yet determinedly hopeful. That is good. Your faith in such matters will be rewarded. You'll not find patent cliched answers here. No! Here is a place of clarity, of definition, of explanation, of truth. Here combines science and religion, removes tradition and replaces it with fact. Here the universe is holographic, yet tangible, ethereal, yet substantive. Here is a place where time is understood as atemporal. Here there is harmony amidst chaos. Here is where the darkened glass is finally cleared. Here is where you'll find the answers to all the unanswered questions which stretch across the cosmos.
And you are across the cosmos for the next hour. I am Chase Rockwell, and I am your host. I am joined once again in studio by my co-hosts,
David Cameron,
Mark Wilson,
and Lou Rogers.
We resume where we left off last time with the Founding Fathers, their religious beliefs, their affiliations. Were they truly Christians? Can a deist regard themselves as a Christian? Let us resume now this most interesting topic for the celebration of our 239th year as an independent republic, a free country, due to the selfless work of these men and women. Jefferson confronted Islam way back when.
This would be Thomas Jefferson.
Yes, Thomas
back in
Jefferson.
1700.
No, it was right around 1802,
1704.
Okay, just after 1800.
He was dealing with essentially the pirates back then, mostly off
the Treaty of Tripoli.
Around, and that's where, of course, the Marines get their hymn. You know, from the shores of Montezuma to the shore, or halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, was over this whole Islamic piracy thing, and they were essentially attempting to extort money from him. And I think the first time he capitulated and actually paid them, and then they just came back for more. They started hijacking more ships, holding them for ransom. And
the delegation.
That's it. And so that's where the famous song comes from. They sent a battalion in there and captured him, and just kicked the stuffing out of those Libyan pirates.
The original delegation that met with Jefferson was like, Jefferson's like, why are you attacking American ships? Because Allah told us we can attack the enemy wherever we find him, and we found him in your ships, so we're taking it. That was their justification.
Yeah, so this is an old thing. Jefferson's ideology with respect to the government and how we should deal with our sovereignty was far removed from Barack Obama. I could never see Thomas Jefferson saying the future of what did he say now? I forgot it already. The future of something.
Makes no difference.
It does and it doesn't. The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. I can't imagine Jefferson saying that.
No, he thought it was an abomination.
So, all he saw were a bunch of two-bit crooks.
To me,
hijacking ships and killing people.
This really...
And this is where the liberals got the idea of this not being a Christian nation, because in the Tripoli Treaty, Jefferson states, the United States is not a Christian country. Because it's not. It's a country with no basic, we must believe this. It was at that time, it was one of the few countries.
By design. Because it goes back to what I was trying to say earlier. Without freedom, you are in a position of being told, forced, of a gospel of fear, whatever. With freedom, in relationship with our Father in Christ, it takes freedom to grow. It takes freedom. When you're affected by the law, or if you don't do this, or blah blah blah, the work of the heart is impeded.
Why did the founders not want to extend the situation with the monarchy that was in Britain here to the United States?
In my mind, and I know I simplify things, It was the freedom.
Okay, what's the freedom? Where does the king get his authority in Britain? Where did the king believe he got his authority?
From God.
From God.
Sovereign
Exactly.
destiny.
Exactly.
So
and
this
you
is
cannot combat God.
That's
Right.
right. This is my point. They didn't have the freedom. They were being told by this position that he heard from God. In essence, it was no different than the Pope. It was different.
The Pope did the same thing. The Pope argued with Henry VIII over his rule coming from God, and Henry VIII had different ideas, as did a lot of nations during that period of time of the Reformation. They grew up, and they no longer wanted to be, attached to mommy and daddy. So it's surprising to me that, and I'm sure that King George at one time or another must have seen the parallels here. That essentially the colonies were doing the exact same thing that the Tudors did to, the Pope way back when. But
exactly.
What they were trying to protect us from is exactly what we're having to deal with now.
Right, exactly.
Okay? And that's why I say there are no atheists.
You're having
I don't believe that there's an atheist.
What we're having to deal with now is a group or a religion ultimately saying, if you don't believe our way, we're going to kill you.
Islam today is little better than a gang of thugs.
I agree. But I guess, for the simple-minded or those who, I'm trying to bring this down to something that, without all the information, that they can hear a explanation of what's going on in a very simple manner. And you know me, I like to simplify things.
I remember I had a kind of a friend, worked with him. He was a John Birch Society member. He was always upset.
Talking about Rich Zerbini?
Always upset. And about our country and where it's going. This is back in the 70s and then in the 80s. And I wonder what he's thinking today if he's still alive. A lot of people are very frustrated that we deviated so drastically from the Founding Fathers' concepts and the original structure and the value of our Constitution. Today, the Constitution, in many leaders' minds, is an impediment.
It's supposed to be.
It's in the way of their design and their desires.
It's supposed to be.
Right. The Constitution is greater than any one term or man. And it's right. It's a series of checks and balances.
No, the Constitution is even more than that. The Constitution is what protects the people by limiting the government.
Well, it used to be. It's kind of out of hand now.
Hey, that's because people don't understand the Constitution.
What happened to the
I agree.
Patriot Act? The deadline came and went.
The Patriot Act, as it was, the 3 articles, specifically Article 115, are now sunsetted. They are not in place. Mitch McConnell has proposed a revamping. He took what they call Freedom Act that the House passed, and they're looking at that.
But it's over, right?
Those 3
Not
articles,
necessarily.
which were the heart of the Patriot Act,
Would allow
have
the-
essentially sunsetted. They're done.
Would allow the NSA to gather and store all your phone data has been suspended.
That's the
at
only
this point
part
in
of
time.
it.
Well,
that
that was a large part.
What
of
about taking away the rights of citizens by putting them underneath the title of being an enemy of the state?
No, that's still
the
in
enemy
existence.
combatant thing is I believe still
Or
part
an adversary.
Yeah, that's-
Which is interesting verbiage because I watched a particular segment of this riot. And it wasn't a really bad riot, but it was over the killing of that boy. That young man was black.
You're talking about Ferguson, Missouri.
I think
You
it was
mean
there.
the thug in Ferguson?
And they were told, the verbiage was they were told to call them adversaries or combatants or enemies. And I thought that was really weird. Handed down to the
Not really.
military. No, they're civilians. They're us. You don't shoot at your own people. It's real simple. That's what you're always told. If you can avoid killing someone, you avoid it.
The problem is the United
That's
States.
not what they're
The
told.
United States Constitution states that the
Anymore.
military cannot operate on U.S. soil against its citizens.
Yeah.
Posse Comitatus Act,
So I
which the
suppose.
Patriot Act largely dispenses. and
Does
pushes
away
aside.
with
So if you then just change the verbiage from citizens to
combatant.
our enemies, or what's another word?
Adversaries.
Adversaries, then you can do these things to them?
That's the way they're trying to end run around the Constitution.
But that's terrible.
See, everything's an end run anymore. You know, every. That's,
And why is
that's
that? Because we don't understand the rule book. It's like playing Monopoly.
Well,
do we
it's
know the rules of Monopoly?
It's either they don't understand them, or in some cases, like you would say,
playing-
they don't want to play by those rules.
It's playing Monopoly by chutes and ladder rules.
We're
is
just
what
making
it is.
rules. It's more like playing Fizbin.
Exactly. Let's make it up as we go.
That's the card game from the Star Trek episode, A Piece of the Action, for all
What I
of you
see
out there who
is,
are curious.
If you have the National Guard set up base in a particular town, it all then depends upon what orders they're given from their superiors on how to address them. Meaning that the individual National Guard doesn't have the conscience to say, I will never fire on a U.S. civilian. I would rather die before I shoot my people. You know, what happens when orders come down that they are called enemies of the state? They're called adversaries of the state. Then all of a sudden,
Each one's going to have to make their own decision.
well, then they're stripped of their citizenship by virtue of simply a term.
Exactly.
And that term is fluid depending upon who issues it. But it will hold up in court at the time. These were, enemies of the state for whatever reason. So realistically, the government then can eradicate any group of people it wants for any reason at any time by simply changing the terminology from citizen to an enemy.
Look at Waco,
that's a very
Texas,
powerful
and David
change.
Koresh. Was the guy alone? Yeah, he was alone. Was he hurting anybody? Not so much.
But he,
Well, the little girls he was raping probably would have taken issue with you on that. Except
Well,
they
yeah.
were burned to a crisp by Janet Reno's
Right. Did we need
Justice Department.
Did we need a tank going in and lighting the place up like a Roman candle?
Are you familiar with Jade Helm 13 or 15?
Who?
Jade Helm 15.
Obviously
It is a
not.
military exercise going to take place in 7 states. And, there are a bunch of people who are not happy about it because they see it as a trial balloon by the Barack Hussein Obama administration to impose martial law.
Why would they put 7 states on this exercise? What would be
Because
the
they're going to
point?
have UN troops practicing.
What?
Yeah. You guys with the blue hat, big U, big
Wait,
N.
these aren't United States military?
Some will be.
the UN has already offered to come in and take control of different things in the United States.
What? This is a twilight zone. This
See, this is the problem.
This
the
is why you have to stay abreast of what's going on in politics.
This
I
progression,
hate politics, and this is why.
the progression of what's going on is a lot further than we realize. It really is.
This is like
progression
something out of
tearing down our government,
a
and our
moronic,
freedom.
twisted tale.
Our freedoms
What would the UN
are almost
troops be
gone.
on USA soil for?
Well, under many different subjects, especially Agenda 21 and small arms fire.
Yeah, guns,
Small arms,
control.
they have the right to come into any nation of the UN and confiscate all guns owned by the citizens.
Who? No, that's absolutely asinine.
No, that's the treaty with the UN that John Kerry signed.
Then John Kerry should be put in prison for something like that. Okay, that's stupid. That's absolutely
What,
stupid.
for
because-
violating the Second Amendment?
Good luck
Because
with that.
John Kerry will live and will die, and he'll have no guarantee as to who will use that authority in future days.
John Kerry doesn't give a crap.
What kind
Do
of
they
a
ever think
short-sighted?
about their own kids?
They don't give a crap
How
about
stupid
that.
can you be?
Their kids are part of the elitist group.
Yeah, but see,
And they know
that-
As this
but that's my
broadcast is
question.
being...
that elitist group is not protected from things like ISIS.
just let me get a little thing,
ISIS
okay?
is no big
These
deal.
are one of the things that really shouldn't have happened
That's not true. If
if
they
the
want,
Constitution had been observed all these years. Jade Helm, a new special operations exercise that runs from July 15th through September 15th, encompasses the Army Special Operations Command. Where is it? I'm trying to tell you all the people that are going to be partaking in this. but this report I'm seeing is actually 9 states it's being operated in. Texas, Utah, California, New Mexico.
Texas?
Wait a second. Do the
Yes.
people of Texas vote yes on this?
No.
No.
This is a federal
They're told by
thing.
the federal government, you will do this.
Wait a
You see,
second. No,
you-
that's an impossibility.
That's
There's
not
no
an
crisis.
impossibility.
You forget
Do you know
one
how
thing.
much land the federal government owns in each state? The federal government is the primary landholder.
The federal government owns zero land
federal
in the United
government
States.
controls-
Wrong. We are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So the
We
people
were.
Okay.
Let me ask you something.
own the
How
land.
often
92%
does the Tooth Fairy visit your house?
92% of all land mass in the state of Alaska is owned by the United States federal government.
No, it's
you
owned
cannot
by
go
the-
Department of the Interior.
You cannot go on
by
it without
the
federal
people.
Well,
permission.
it used to be considered that way based on the government was owned by the people, but it's not.
No, the
anymore.
government's not owned by the
The
government
government-
is the
no.
people. They're representatives
It's not
of the
anymore.
people.
The government used to say in Alaska, look, if you want to go survivalist and live subsistence living, we will let you go in to our wilderness. You can chop down as many trees as you want, build a log cabin, live there is all you want. Now there's 7 houses left in the area that are allowed to do that, and no one else is allowed in, and those people lose that property when their grandchildren die.
Why?
Because they decided you can't do that anymore.
Who's the they?
The United States federal government.
And who voted on that?
Nobody. It comes down to departmental rules. And the Department of the Land of Interior said, you can't do this anymore.
So then what you're saying is the federal government is like a person.
It rules like an empire.
Well, and we've given way too much power to these different departments and
Well,
the
that's
government.
wrong.
That's what happened after the Civil War. What most people don't understand, the Civil War had absolutely nothing, I mean nothing, zero to do with slavery. It had everything to do with federal power versus states' rights. And the states' rights lost.
Yeah. Just so you know, yeah, the United States is the biggest landholder in the United States. United States government, federal government.
I
And
thought
so
we were the United
They
States.
can go into their
No longer.
They can go into the states and they can conduct military exercises on their land.
What happened?
Well, Mark, it's been this way for years.
It's a slow erosion.
I read too.
It has
It
been a
says
Well, all right, let me ask you
When-
something. When
when you
Teddy
take a-
Roosevelt set
they're not
aside
gonna tell you
Yosemite
point blank what they're
National
doing.
Park, what do you think he was doing?
They're not going to tell you point blank what
But
they're
the
doing.
Yosemite National
They're
Park
always going to candy coat it.
is there's 2 reasons.
It's federal.
It's a
It's a
preserve,
national park.
For the
but it's for
people.
the people.
Okay, but
Originally.
you don't understand.
Okay.
Right now we've got this big thing going on with Louis Gohmert just
No relation of mine.
ripped into the head of the Department of the Interior the other day, and essentially what he said was that many people are coming to him in the state of Texas and saying, "Look, we're getting a lot of static from members of your department talking to the head of the Interior Department that they're harassing us going on federal lands." Now, and Louis Gohmert said what you said. These lands belong to all of us. Mm-hmm. And if you can't manage them, if you are going to continue to harass, and he routinely used this word arrogance, this arrogance from the Department of the Interior employees towards citizens who are lawfully on that land. And a lot of them are law enforcement personnel. In Texas, you've got a lot of law enforcement personnel go out there and they hunt, or they target practice, or what have you. And they're allowed to do that. These are people who are licensed to carry weapons. But just regular run-of-the-mill, I want to go hiking, I want to go biking, I want to do this, or whatever. And they're getting all this static from federal employees with the Department of the Interior. And Louis Gohmert said, one of the interesting things about my position as a representative is that I sit on, financing committee. And I will probably just defund you. So you won't have any money, and we'll take the administration of federal lands and put them back in the hands of the states, okay? Which means, contrary to what you believe, these lands aren't in the hands of the states or the individuals. They're being managed by the federal government, okay? And that has been a long-held situation going way back to before the turn of the century of 19th to the 20th.
Although I live in the state, I'm a United States citizen.
Okay, I get that.
I am the federal government.
No, you are a subject.
That's the way it was supposed
No,
to
I'm
be.
not a subject.
You are a subject.
Nope. And, I mean...
I'll tell you what. Try walking into the White House. You know, back in Lincoln's time, you could do that.
Yeah.
Lincoln used to routinely entertain people
So did
downstairs.
John Adams, yeah.
Okay.
Do you know,
Well, there's too
used-
many people. I understand that.
No, you used to be able to go onto the White House lawn and have a damn picnic.
yeah, that too.
Yeah, well, there's too many people now. I understand that.
My
No.
point is
How
this.
how can it be okay then and not okay now? You can't do that.
Security concerns, etc. With the acquisition of land by the federal government, however, what it does is it takes the ability for private enterprises to own that land. Okay, the United States federal government was never set up to own land. It was supposed to be an over-encompassing body that held the union together. The states had more leeway than the federal government was supposed to have. Federal government's role is actually very, 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 very small.
Okay, let's switch back to these 9 different states that are
Well, I'm getting conflicting information.
going to be involved in
I've
this.
got 7 states here again, which are California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas.
And what are they going to
And
do
certain
there?
states are set up as hostile, others are set up as permissive, and New Mexico is undecided. And I suppose what they're doing is they're going to be setting up war games were the United States to fall into some sort of... anybody ever see
Washington-
the...
When they state hostile, what they are
Washington?
No, this is just Southwest.
when they state things like hostile, what they're referring to is what the general population will act like.
Exactly, and it's interesting to note
Crowd
that
control.
Utah, which is overwhelmingly conservative, is one of the hostiles. Texas, which is overwhelmingly conservative, is one of the hostiles. New Mexico is indecisive. California, Nevada, Arizona, and Colorado, all leaning liberal, are permissive. So what they've got is exercises essentially, and I know we're probably going to have to do a show on this, and I would like to before this begins implementing.
How do you get a whole state to say yes to this?
Again,
You're told to.
Again, it's the federal government. The federal government has the land, the majority of the land in each one of these states. They just do it.
How did we implement back in 1976? How did we implement a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit nationwide?
Because it's good on gas.
No,
Because
of course.
okay,
It saves fossil
No, no,
fuel.
No.
What they did
But
was they
what
simply
happened
told the
was-
states that you either go 55 or we cut off your funding for infrastructure.
right.
road work.
You have no federal money for road repair, so every state had no choice. They had a knife up to their throat.
See, the federal government is taking
The federal government is not what it's supposed to be.
Taking control.
And this is what the founding fathers
Didn't want.
wanted to prevent against.
prevent
So,
it.
with respect to this whole situation with are they Christian, are they deist? So is a deist a Christian? You know, we get this muddying understanding for some reason or another. The people, I'm not talking about the elite. I know what the elite is doing. The elite wants to get rid of the shining, house on the hill because it represents freedom. It represents breaking free. And much like we've discussed here many times in the past, with the pastors sitting behind the pulpit, they're going to be reluctant to give up that position because it relegates them to the mass of everybody else.
I mean, they have, yeah.
And they like their power. They like the
Right.
perks.
They
They
want
like
the
the
power.
prestige.
Right.
Okay, so they're not going to glom on or attach themselves to the truth if it means a loss of their power prestige. The elitists are not going to look at this and say, well, this isn't constitutional. This isn't what we set out
Is
to
this
do.
a computer game, or are they going to be physical?
This is physical boots on the ground.
It's like war
who
games.
is going to be on the ground? Who?
When I was in the
is
Air
it
Force-
militia? Is
Okay,
it
29 Palms, the military base 29 Palms. They have the military group there drive vehicles that are mocked to look like Soviet Union vehicles. Other armored vehicles from different divisions will come to 29 Palms and practice war games. United States A.M. Bradley versus Soviet T-72 tank.
that's a mock war?
It's a
I'm
mock
talking
war, and
about-
that's what this is.
Is this against civilians or against
This part
or a
of
combatant that's entered our
no,
country?
you're missing it. At
No.
29 Palms, part of it is civilians operate and help either the American side or the Soviet side, or they're undecided. So that the military gets used to having to deal with different civilians that will either A, help you, B, say they'll help you and try and kill you, or D, just try and kill you.
It's a training of the troops to deal with. It's not an actual happening.
Right. Is it training the troops to deal with U.S. citizens
Yes.
or with a supposed enemy?
No,
Well, because
US.
it's not
So the
solely
enemy then is the U.S. citizens.
So it's not solely U.S. troops being trained.
Jade Helm 15 is a joint forces military training exercises planned for July 15th through September 15th, 2015. It combines forces from the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. Activity is planned for 7 states, with Army Special Operations Forces working primarily in 5: Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, and Texas. According to military press releases and public statements, the exercises are meant to help train U.S. military forces and to practice in a variety of environments. Such exercises also allow leadership to practice joint force coordination, which is often critical in military engagements. The public, in general, is not expected to see much activity because the majority of these training exercises will be conducted in rural areas. Okay, what has gotten a lot of people freaked out is this. We used to do war games when I was in the Air Force, okay? And I actually have a funny story about that, but that's something different. The difference is that we would do them within... I was stationed at Buckley Air National, not Buckley, Camp Bullis, which is in Texas, southern Texas, kind of up in the hilly country. And we would do war games as part of our training. Security police is regarded as part of the infantry, so you have to have some infantry training. I was a squad leader, so I led my squad. And my friend was another squad leader. He led his squad. And it was a really, 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 really hot day, and we were up in the watchtower.
In southern Texas, a hot day?
Which was in July. Which was air-conditioned, though. So that was nice. And we had a cooler of soda pop, which was also nice.
Sweet.
So, and because we had a 360-degree view of the terrain below us, because it was a pretty high tower, I, for some reason, thought it would be funny to run one army into the others. That's what we did. But that's beside the point. That was just,
Sounds like something out of a sad sack comic.
It was out of a sad sack.
Okay, but what is this?
But my point is that we did do military games, and we used blanks on our M16 machine guns, or semi-auto, M16
Burst fire.
Little flash suppressor thingy, and we had our little our half tracks that we drove around in and crap. No one was obviously killed, but also it was all on a base. There was no civilian personnel.
This is making no sense still.
This is something much different. This is multi-state, contained within the southwestern United States, all on federal lands. And while they say that the population will largely not see anything going on because they're in rural areas, well, that's where most federal land is places where people aren't. What you have to ask yourself, the question is that why? And of course, the thing that is left to mind is that this is a trial balloon to see how easy it could be to effectively declare martial law, and what would you do with the fallout? Because specifically in those states are a hell of a lot of survivalists and people who are not necessarily predisposed to wanting to just simply roll over and play dead should the military roll into town.
I see two understandings, wisdom-wise, of this. Number one is you're trying to effectively coordinate 4 different branches of the military. I understand that. And you're trying to coordinate them out of their element, which is not on their own base, which I also understand that. But I'm still lacking with why they would go into 7 or 9 different states. What would be the purpose of that? Because you can accomplish the exact same drill of coordination in Texas is quite large. You can do it in one state with various types of terrains, or you can take another state. Well, why 7 or why 9? And what would be the point?
The states that they're involved in outside of Colorado are all desert terrain.
It's still... What's the purpose behind this?
Well, I can
Many of us.
I'm on a site called Skeptoid right now.
Oh.
And this is what they're saying. Okay? I just told you the original or the official announcement from the military. But then there are the conspiracy theories where the story the U.S. government tells us is said to be simply a misdirection from the alleged real purpose of the exercises. These are the ones that Skeptoid lists as possible real answers to what's going on with Jade Helm 15. One, it is really an exercise to ready the military for martial law. That seems to be the most popular one. Two, it is designed to teach how to capture and imprison dissident citizens. That's also another popular one. That's why it's number 2. 3, it includes repurposed Walmarts where mysterious closings and construction are underway. I don't know what's going on with that. Last couple of days, I've been seeing that there's these Walmart conspiracies, and they're something to do with FEMA camps and everything else.
There's a bunch of Walmarts that have been shut down for plumbing issues for 6 months at a time. But if anyone paid attention, it was the ones that particularly went on strike during Black Tuesday a few years ago and made Walmart pay more money per hour. Those are the ones that all got shut down. And all those employees will be fired and let go, and then they'll bring new employees back in under cheaper labor. But that's just simple math there.
Well, I have not followed the whole thing with the Walmarts, so I don't really even know how to address that necessarily.
It sounds to me logical that it boils down to money.
We have too many eyes on the ground through technology to say that different types of terrains are necessary to mobilize a joint force. What's the common enemy? That's what I want to know. Is
the common enemy is the United States citizen exercising his right to the Second Amendment and defending his property with a long-distance, high-powered rifle. Well, that is the enemy.
Are they breaking down the idea that the military doesn't act on our own soil, and so the more states are involved with...
It's a wearing down.
It's a wearing down. That's what I'm thinking.
This is just like the analogy of putting a frog in boiling water. You drop a frog in boiling water, it will jump out. You slowly raise the temperature from room temperature water to boiling. The frog will sit there and cook.
They're just now putting, in essence, in this particular thing, they're just now putting the pan on the burner. But
so this one will go by without a hitch.
Right.
This one will be fine.
Well, if you stir up the water
less.
now and everything goes off okay, the next one is not going to be nearly as absurd. Mm-hmm. On Monday, April 27th, 2015, a town hall meeting in Bishop, Texas, found Lieutenant Colonel Mark Lastoria in front of a very concerned crowd of Texans. The audience filled the normal meeting area and an overflow room. Citizens wanted to know what was going on with Jade Helm 15. The conclusion was they did not like or trust Lastoria's answers. Texas Governor Greg Abbott responded to the concerns of these citizens by directing the Texas State Guard, not the National Guard, but the Texas State Guard, to monitor the military training operations. This order was sent in a letter which reads in part, quote, to address concerns of Texas citizens and to ensure that Texas communities remain safe, secure, and informed about the military procedures occurring in their vicinity, I am directing the Texas State Guard to monitor Operation Jade Helm 15. During the operation's 8-week training period from July 2015 to September 2015, I expect to receive regular updates on the progress and safety of the operation.
And
during the training operation, it is important that Texans know their safety, constitutional rights, private property rights, and civil liberties will not be infringed. So,
what did they say? What did the government say to that, though?
The government is taking a position that this is all much ado about nothing, obviously. Whatever the government's true intents are, whether or not they're legitimate and they are up above board is what they're saying is going on, or they're hiding something, they're not going to tell you, and they're certainly not going to tell Governor Greg Abbott because they care less about him.
Of mobilizing that many troops,
you've got to be kidding me,
is staggering.
George Bush signed in a stimulus bill before he left office. Barack Hussein Obama signed another stimulus bill after he first got into office. The two total bills were into the trillions.
Okay,
Trillions.
my point is that
Trillions.
this is if
Nobody
you add
cares what it cost is.
Well, it's extremely expensive, so you don't throw away money for nothing. So there has to be something of great value
yes.
in doing this.
And what
Yes.
is more precious than control?
I lean towards this, that yes, it is a precursor to us, I mean the federal government, seeing the feasibility of a martial law situation. And rather than doing it cold, it's better to do it incrementally. So you float a trial balloon. Nothing is going to happen with this. Nothing. Zero. Zip. Nada. Jade Helm 15 is going to do what they say it's going to do. And no one is going to be impinged or affected. But what's going to happen is two things. Federal government's going to see that they can, in fact, mobilize and do this and pull it off. One. Two, the next time they decide to do this, there will be zero press. Because what's going to be in the back of everybody's mind is that, well, they already did this, nothing happened, no big deal. Who cares?
Well,
Nothing.
So why would you mobilize against your own populace?
It doesn't matter.
No,
Look,
there's got to be a reason for this.
my belief is that
there
it's a
reason.
precursor to incarcerating dissidents.
Look,
Hitler did it.
It's a
Stalin did it. The
When
Japanese,
it's
the
a
Chinese
part
did it.
of the
Why
one
the hell
who-
should we
it's a
be
globalist.
immune
It's a
from
part of the
corruption, from the
globalist
dullards, the
concept.
miscreants?
let's look at it this way. Go to George Takei, who
Wait,
was-
wasn't he
who was
on Star Trek?
Not Brad.
was alive
Well, that's George Takei.
during World War II, and find out you go to school one day and come home, and your family's been rounded up by the U.S. Army and taken out to the desert, and said, "This is where you're going to live from now on because you're Japanese."
Someone
So
wasn't thinking when
don't
they did
think that
Yes, they were.
we have these Bill of Rights that the government is necessarily going to
they
follow
weren't.
them.
They weren't thinking too deeply when they did that.
Well, yes and no. I mean that.
They needed a
you
boogeyman,
can
and
debate
everybody
that all
knew
day long.
everybody knew Germans and Italians. And you can't distinguish Germans and Italians from the rest of the Caucasian public, but you could pick out Japanese, and that's the reason they were picked.
I don't think it was the sole reason. And there were incidents of Germans on the East Coast being similarly detained as well. But to get back to the salient point here is that this is how far askew we have come
Right. Well,
with our government.
let me jump in real quick. You were asking why. When I was in high school taking high school civics, I was asked, if you wanted to run for office, what would you do? So I would run for the President of the United States, become president. Upon entering my third year of term, that the first national emergency, the first storm, the first thing to cause, I would declare martial law, disband Congress, get rid of the Senate, and declare myself Lou Rogers president for life. And don't
think
think
you can do
that who's going to stop you once. Look, there's a simple rule. The people with guns make the rules.
the military, there's some really good guys there.
There was.
There still are.
There
Barack
was.
Obama has done pretty thorough house cleaning of military leadership since he's been president.
All
There's
hired.
a lot of patriots
No,
in
all
our,
hired-
our
They're
military.
not the leaders.
You misunderstand.
You don't
all
have to be
officers
the
have-
leader.
All
No,
officers
but you have to
gone
do
through training
what the
and have been tested.
forefathers did, and that is you've got to stand and look at the sovereign in the eye and say, "Screw off, buddy,"
Well, they
and
won't-
you therefore have to risk everything.
They will.
Okay, and the signers
There
of
are
the
some of us who
Declaration
will.
of Independence paid a heavy price. Most of them died broke, homeless. Okay, they were remembered posthumously in a good light by us, but at the time, their lives were not great. I mean, it's not. They were that era's terrorists, and we don't look at them that way because no, we're Americans, but we were a British colony then. Okay, and that's a whole different situation. So when you're looking at it from this side, saying, well, there's all these survivalists and there's these good military men, and they've got to suddenly decide, I'm going to stand in opposition to my commander-in-chief, which is what the president is to the military. You take an oath when you join the military, and that oath is to obey the commander-in-chief's orders. He is your ultimate commander.
You also have another oath to defend the Constitution.
To defend the Constitution, okay?
Not the people, not the country, the Constitution.
But military is trained to follow orders, to follow the chain of command. If you're going to stand in opposition to your commanding officer, whether it be your immediate commanding officer or your commander-in-chief, there's going to be a consequence. There's just no way around that. And all of those people, all of those forefathers, founding fathers, did that when they declared their independence from England.
They declared war. What do you think? The Declaration of Independence was not saying, we're going to be independent. It was a declaration, we are now at war with you.
And we are so far removed from that today. We don't really think or contemplate what it meant. Now, you can watch The Patriot with Mel Gibson, and you can see how brutal the British were in certain situations. And, of course, it's a fantastical tale, and
brutality went both ways on that army.
It did go both ways. But it doesn't really give you the feeling, that the sick in the gut feeling of knowing that you're an outlaw, instantly an outlaw. You're going to be hunted. And unlike the days of the Revolutionary period with the colonists,
where you could move from one city to another and be a different person.
Exactly. It isn't that way anymore. This is a far different landscape we're dealing with. And escaping the probing eye of these people is not easy. And Jade Helm 15 is proving that. They're employing drones in part of these exercises, state-of-the-art military equipment, GPS, fill in the blank. This is a trial balloon, and I believe that it's valuable for them to see what they can and cannot do. I don't trust my government.
I see, when you mention drone technology, there's no rules to this game.
Absolutely.
We do know that through the uniqueness of drone technology, from literally anywhere on Earth. So you talk about people that are hunkered down, that are survivalists. If you use your technology with drones, you can fly. They now have radar detect. They have everything.
They've got drones that are an inch in size.
And so maybe it's to see how they can target certain areas.
Yeah.
How easy it will be.
Individuals.
Individuals too. Because I just don't see what would be the purpose of a joint military. What kind of an exercise would you do?
Well,
and what would be the enemy you're trying to
You
address?
are this first one is a trial balloon, okay? And you are going to get people used to the idea of this thing coming. There will be another one, and there will be another one, and there will be another one.
It's the Novocaine shot before they pull your tooth.
One of the reasons that ISIS was able to go and chop those people's heads off, and they looked all calm until it actually, they were getting their heads chopped off, is because they were taking those people before cameras constantly. And they got used to it. They didn't know that this time was going to be their last one. The people who had their heads chopped off, they may have been brought up before that camera 20 times. And it becomes rote. So that by the time that this is the one, they don't know that it's the one. It might be, it might not be. And that's what we're doing here with these military exercises. And maybe this one, maybe it's 5th one out, 7th one out, 20th one out. All of a sudden, they're playing like, it's just another game. No, it's real this time. They don't know it. Why do they need to know it?
Well, the populace has no defense against the military. It's impossible.
I get that.
That's what the Second Amendment was all about.
We have no defense. They have better toys.
They do have better toys.
They have an infinite supply of toys.
What you have to bank on is what you said earlier, that there are decent military people out there. Well,
there are.
There are, but they're not in the positions they need to be. You would literally need to have 2nd, 3rd, 4th tier military leaders bump off their supervisors because they have been replaced, okay? Barack Obama has been systematically replacing military leadership in his time in office. Now, I don't know if you've been aware of that, but he's been popping off military leaders left and right, just spitting them out like pets.
From everything I have read, they've had people that were given questionnaires about would you fire on American public if ordered to. Those that said no are no longer employed by the United States military.
So, yeah, as darkness is soon falling, we've got a short period of time where we can shine the light, and that's what's coming. So
well, this is such an uplifting conversation today.
You know what? It's the
Happy 4th of July, everybody.
239th anniversary of our Declaration of Independence.
Part of it is we deserve it for being lazy.
And, yeah,
we brought
the
this on ourselves.
And the arf, 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 arf of our populace has led to this.
You know what's interesting? It's almost a very dark humor. On the 4th of July, people have barbecues. They get together. It's a day off. It's generally a nice day because of the timing, unless you live in Cowlitz County. And you shoot off all these fireworks. Well, the problem was, the Declaration of Independence was a very foreboding time, a fearful time, a time where everybody was very somber.
They were scared to death.
It took a long time to get all the signatures on the
They operated in fear. They were
I don't think
scared.
it was finished being signed until August.
It took years. Now, finally, when they get that declaration signed and sent, they were in the middle of a battle. But it became a full-force battle, and there was no turning back. Because now they were all branded as traitors to be hung.
Yeah.
And so the July 4th we celebrate really is the declaration that now we're going to war for real.
Yeah, we are declaring war.
And so it was a very, very difficult time for our country. We celebrated in joy, but realistically we should be celebrating the end of the war, which what happened in
1786.
86. I don't know why we celebrate this date. We celebrate
because we are asserting our autonomy. We're asserting our
Never
independence
before-
from Britain.
Never
We
before in the history
declared
of
our
man.
independence.
Never before in the history of mankind had a nation have people gotten together and said, as a group, we will be free. We will be free from you. We will be free from your tyranny.
No, nobody celebrates Cornwallis' surrender at Yorktown. Nobody cares. Nobody knows when it happened.
Right.
Most people don't even know what Cornwallis was.
But we've come so far from what we initially set out to do. Had the United States not existed, this world would look much, much different. There's no doubt about that. We have been the innovators. We have been the risk takers. We have been on the vanguard of anything that's ever really happened of a positive.
We are the greatest nation.
We
to
are
exist.
the greatest nation, and that's what scares the elitists, because there's no way that they can contain the United States under their ideological model. There's no room for that type of control. You've got to destroy what the United States is in order to remake it in their image, and so they don't want to. They just go globalist. So these are people who, I know you want to be honest or fair with them, rather, but they're miscreants. They are the antithesis of what the founders had in mind when they risked all to assert their independence against Great Britain. And we're doing no one any favors. We're not doing Islam any favors by capitulating. We're not doing illegal immigration any favors by capitulation. This country needs to survive, and yet I know that it won't. The book on the bookshelf behind you, 1984 by George Orwell, that's where we're headed, because that's the only place we can go. That was a book about a one-world government. Now, it led people to believe that there were three, but there was just one. And the people were allowed to believe that at any one time, one government was at war with the other two, or two were at war with the other one. And it switched constantly, kept you off balance. And the majority, over 80% of the people, were what they called the proletariat, or just the common. And then there was this very small little group at the very top of that were called the elites. And that's where we're headed. And Winston Smith, the protagonist in that book, said that the hope of the future lies with the proletariat. And that's the truth. Until the people out there, the until they wake the hell up and stop trusting these psychopaths that they've elected because they get a crumb, this is going to change. And it's a sad commentary because a lot of people have fought and died for this country's freedom. I don't regard that it is in vain, because even if the United States ceases to exist in the next year, we had a time, it left a mark, it's not going to be easily blotted out, and maybe some future society will look at it and say that is the model that needs to be resurrected. I don't know. I know that people sometimes find their best when they're in their worst. The Christian church grew honestly and exponentially under persecution. It has grown fat and lazy under ease, I guess.
Under acceptance?
Just without the persecution there, we seem to have lost our way.
I agree.
And
we don't know where we're at.
The founders were in a different time, and the oppression of Great Britain led them to make decisions, I think, that were for the betterment of all of humanity. Not just the United States, but all of humanity.
Well,
this world has been well served by the United States of America.
No,
there's no doubt about that.
Let's face it, England and Brazil would all be speaking German right now if it was not for the United States.
World War II was the only hope this planet had for keeping the Japanese Empire and Nazism at bay.
Well, the Japanese would have owned the entire Pacific.
They would. There's no doubt about that. That was their intent.
Right.
They owned it anyway.
Well,
it's kind of funny.
Yes,
they
and
own
no.
almost all of Hawaii.
Yes and no. Yes
no,
and no.
You're talking property versus military rule.
Yeah, I hope the listeners understand where, at least, and I'm not going to speak for my co-host, but at least where I'm coming from, insofar as that, yeah, the United States is, in my opinion, the last great hope on the face of the earth. I don't think we would have the earth the way it is today without the United States. To believe that what our founding fathers conceptualized was somehow in error or misogynistic or unfair in one breath, and in the next breath allow these cultures from South America, Mexico, ISIS, Islamic, to flee over, just pour over our borders unfettered. There's absolutely zero logic there. They are not going to come into our country and all of a sudden start to obey our laws. They're going to come into our country and they're going to bring their culture and their laws with them. And this is being seen all over the place. What do you think Sharia law is? What do you think the defense is by a lot of Mexican and other South American immigrants who come in here and are accused of child rape because they are taken up with a 12-year-old girl? Well, in their country, that is typical. But here, we've got laws against it. Eventually, what you're going to see is that those age of consent laws are going to drop or fade altogether based upon your national heritage. If you are Mexican or South American, Uruguayan, what have you, and you're caught with a 12-year-old girl, you're going to get a pass. If you are a white Anglo-Saxon, it is off to prison with you. There will not be any equal judgment or equal under the law.
This is case. Stony Point.
I had a brain.
It happens to all of us, Jason.
So that's all I'm saying. We need to protect what we've got. Otherwise, it's going to be lost. And while you may think that ignorant of me, narrow-minded of me,
seeing we're touching on the immigration idea, I'd just like our listeners to know, from 1918, the end of the First World War, all the way up until 1963, the United States immigration policy was absolute zero. No one was allowed in. Period.
We had immigration, but it was regulated.
We regulated to the point of zero for that time period. It was very crisp and very clean, absolute none.
I will table that for a moment because I'm
You
not.
go ahead and
I know that
research it
the
out.
Ellis Island immigration policy ended, and so it was severely restricted. But I know that there was still immigration, but not at the level there was with Ellis Island, where it was actually pretty loose. And there was a reason for the Ellis Island type immigration, and that was because we needed people.
We needed labor.
Then they put an end to it.
Right, we didn't need labor anymore, so we stopped it.
Yeah, sometime right around 1920, 21, somewhere in there.
Right. The idea of immigration is what benefits the country, not what
But
benefits.
that was all legal immigration.
the
Even
people
when you're going
coming
to Ellis Island, it was still legal immigration. You still went through an entry point. You still were checked
Right.
out, etc. Not this, we'll tear down the fence and we're not going to police our borders, but we'll grope you all over the place at the TSA.
Right, and failed out of 72 airports 67 times.
95% failure rate. A 95% failure. I
One
don't
ma-
know of any.
One man with a bomb taped to his back.
Yes, the small is back. And why? Because they never grope you there. Because they're always feeling your junk, but they won't check anyplace else. When I was in police academy training, we had a pat-down
Not the
procedure.
movie.
Pardon?
Not the movie.
No, when I was Air Force security police training. There was a pat-down procedure, and you got the whole body, including the small of the back, where they missed this bomb.
Right. The same
I
place
don't understand it.
The same place many people would put a weapon, say a knife, a gun.
And a 95% failure rate is just beyond the pale. It's a cartoon. And yet that is what they have.
Why we do not need the TSA.
TSA, exactly. They need to go away.
It has never once stopped a terrorist attack.
So, on that note, I think we'll bid a happy 4th of July to all of our listeners. And hopefully this gave you something to think about while you're out there eating your hot dogs and your hamburgers and lying in the sun and enjoying everything this country is giving you. Understand that there were people who gave their all. Not just in the Revolutionary War time period, but since in the wars we've
just
had.
a happy little sunshine today.
Well, you know what? Freedom comes with a cost. Freedom isn't free, to coin the old phrase.
Well, I believe that the terminology was the tree of freedom can only be watered by the blood of patriots and tyrants.
From time to time. Yes. Anyway. So,
For David Cameron.
Mark Wilson.
And Rogers.
I am Chase Rockwell saying so long until the next time you find yourself across the cosmos.
Send any questions or comments to us via email at info@acrossthecosmos.com. Also, visit us on the web at www.acrossthecosmos.com for show updates, news, and other important information. No part of this podcast may be used without the express written permission from the staff of Across the Cosmos. Across the Cosmos is a production of Omite Corporation. Copyright 2015.